Hello. Kind of last minute yet again, but going to finish up with the Rex Heuermann victims and anything past where we left off Monday. My voice is decided to take a deep turn, so you just have to bear with me. All right, let's. Okay, and I did turn in the possible match on UP6938 with Tiffany Dixon. I just sent an email, so I'll probably follow up by making some phone calls later on because I think it's a very viable one, and a quick comparison is an easy thing for them to do within the system. I would hope. So, hello, Jill. Hello, Daisy. Hope you guys are well. Glad to have you here today. Okay, so notice I pinned these from the affidavit using the coordinates and the feet measurement roughly. They are all so close together, to me, it almost seems methodical. And it does seem like maybe check right here. Let's do another search of right here. And then the unidentified Asian male that was found, and that case is still unsolved, unidentified. Jessica Taylor, along with the baby Peaches. Baby Peaches is still unidentified. And if you notice how close together that Valerie Mack and the child were, this is also information that I was able to gather from other maps and newspapers and things like that, along with NamUs. So if you notice where Valerie Mack and Peaches is, and then you have Jessica Taylor here, and then roughly 7 miles away, is where they found Peaches' mother and Fire Island Jane Doe. Which the rest of her was found down here, Davis Park area. So to me, it does seem like, say it is 2 serial killers, that Fire Island Jane Doe, the cases of Valerie Mack and Jessica Taylor are matched also because of where the rest of their torsos, you can see how close together their torsos were found. So that links them together. And then the distance between Peach's baby and Peaches, she had a tattoo of Peaches. So she's just been dubbed Peaches Jane Doe. And then Peaches Jane Doe child, which is then forensically, they did the DNA and matched that. So if you just notice where all of these are, it just really leads me to think that the other cases, the outlier is the Asian male. That's the only one that I'm like, I don't know. But it does seem like, just based on the locations of where the bodies were found, that the remaining 1, 2, 3, what is that? 1, 2, Valerie Mack, Jessica Taylor, Peaches Jane Doe, and Peaches Jane Doe toddler, along with Fire Island Jane Doe, definitely could be the same killer. I would like to talk to locals to see, is this it's a very it's a very upscale area, so it's not like there's a lot of like a lot of the other victims that you see here on my map where they were dumped were places that, you know, like other the ones that were shock and awe, like they dismembered these bodies and they placed them in places that they knew they would be found, similar to the Ohio serial killer who has never been identified. Um, this is the research I had done on him, but whoever this killer is, left the victims in um, almost like a pattern, you know, to me. And they were on display. They were dismembered. He's dubbed the torso killer, one of many apparently, because a torso killer is also synonymous with Shawcross and obviously all of the unidentified, you know, dismembered and unidentified. Some have been identified, but the cases are still unsolved, happening in this section of New York. But now I'm going to hop over to, so now you see the areas of which they all are, which I think tells us something about the killers. So you have to bear with me while I get, hey Lake, hey Monica, good to see you here. We did. This is Peach's tattoo, which I feel like by that tattoo, I mean, that tattoo looks, usually tattoos will fade over time. And I don't know if it's just the print, but even the lines on the tattoo still look pretty fresh. I mean, obviously there's some bleed. It's hard to kind of tell what they are. So I'm not sure like the tattoo artist was super talented, but the coloring and the fact that there isn't much, you know, it's still really defined, makes me kind of wonder if it wasn't a newer tattoo. And the jewelry that they found on baby Peach's dough and Peach's dough were identical. Like they were wearing the same jewelry. And then we covered Valerie Mack and Jessica Taylor. We left off with, see what I mean about, this is Cherry's Jane Doe, which I still want to find that America's Most Wanted, because they apparently did a little segment about Cherry's Jane Doe, the way that her body was dismembered and the way that Peaches was dismembered and the way that Jessica Taylor was dismembered. It was a part of a segment that they ran on America's Most Wanted, according to the newspapers. You can see by this tattoo, like it's a little bit more faded. It's a little bit more, the lines aren't as defined. The red is not as bright. Not sure why you would want these, but you know, to each their own. But you can really kind of see like it seems like an older tattoo. Okay, so now we're getting into April 11th, 2010. So I didn't add it into my my thing, but what prompted all of this was on May 1st, I believe May 1st, Shannon Gilbert. She was a export on Craigslist. Her driver drove her to a man by the name of Joe Brewer's home. I'm going to go ahead and pull this up on the map so you can just see it. It has been deemed an accident. So she starts out here at Joe Brewer's house. Her driver is waiting outside for her. He gets I'm not sure if it was a phone call or if Joe actually came out and was like, hey, come get your girl. Like she's going nutso. So he goes in and she is on the phone with 911, and she is her affect is very strange. um Thank you, Frank. I really appreciate that. It's good to see you here. Yeah, I've been, me. But yeah, like I think that her affect in that 911 call is so interesting. And I understand, like, you would want to keep your voice lower, but there were times during that her voice would go up some, but it was almost like her the inflection of her voice, like the actually hearing like fear, just wasn't there. I don't know if you guys have listened to it. I listened to the whole entire thing without it being edited, and I it is such a tough one. I sympathize with the families, especially because later so the mother of Shannon Gilbert was murdered by one of Shannon's sisters in a brutal way, stabbed like 220 sometimes, which if you really think about the energy that you would expel stabbing someone 220 sometimes, like, wow, that's a lot. So there's a lot of tragedy for this family and probably fallout from Shannon. She was missing for just a little over a year. So she starts out here. Her driver is trying to get her to go back into the city and, like, come on, let's go. She's hiding behind a couch. At one point, they all decide to go outside, and then she takes off. She takes off down the fairway, and she heads to Gustav Coletti's home. And as you can see, he lives right here at the entrance to this very, very nice neighborhood. Okay, so she runs here. He calls the police, so they have that 911 call, and she's clearly in distress. He's trying to keep her there, but she doesn't do that. She then comes over here to this area, hides in the bushes, and then the next time so when on his 911 call, he says, oh, she's headed towards this area right here. And her driver is also heading that way. That's what Gustav says in his interview, or in his 911 call. The driver says that he just took off. And then she knocks on this lady here's, I can't remember her name. She knocks on her door. She calls 911 as well, and she's not letting her in. And she even states on there, like, I'm taking care of my elderly mother, like I can't let her in, but there is a woman here in just obvious distress. And then, even though there is no 911 call from Peter Hackett, for some reason he inserted himself into the story. Whether this actually happened, I have my doubts, but he said he called Shannon's mother and says that he runs a wayward women home out of his house. He is a doctor. He was like a chief, like the, what do you call that? Like the chief, he's like the doctor of like an entire wing. I think it was an emergency wing, like I can't remember what that's called, but like, and so not too far-fetched, but later it's determined that he's never run a home for wayward girls. And then, so obviously he becomes, someone that the media goes after. And there's like one video of him where he's like, the media comes up to him, he's getting ready to get in his car, and he does this weird, like, and then it was like, my defibrillator. So there's him. And then her body was later found right here behind his house. They actually took Shannon's mother to his deck to show her the area where her daughter's body was found. I think the call is what was surprising to me. And then, I mean, I know it's common. There's been many of sadistic killers and serial killers that have called the victim's family. And you'll see that with Rex. He did that as well. So it is not uncommon, but I find it very odd. And he said that he told her that he gave her medication. The two separate medical examiners did autopsies on her, and one was undetermined, and I think they were both undetermined. But it's a peculiar set of circumstances that in the life of Shannon Gilbert, that's for sure. And or she was found without clothes on, and they were kind of been discarded along a trench. Just looked like she just kind of taken her clothes off along this trench. And I actually have seen that. I've seen a case where that did in fact happen. The victim got disoriented. And it had some to do with drugs, even though there were no drugs found in Shannon's system, according to both medical examiners. So what we have here is just like he's saying he gave her medication. She doesn't have any medication in her system, so here he is lying about that. Is he lying about the encounter? Is he involved somehow? Is he doing that sadistic thing where you taunt the mother of your victim? Or is it that she just got into a state of psychosis? That's what happened in the other case, that he got disoriented in a state of psychosis / I think it was drug induced in that instance. And even though hypothermia was setting in, the victim like took his clothes off. And so in that research that I did, it was like, just the medical examiner and different panelists were, like, it's definitely when you're disoriented, when you're in a state of psychosis, it's not uncommon to find victims that disrobe. And so that's something that I'm sure they took into consideration as well. One of the things that the medical examiner from that the family hired said that her hyoid bone was, there were parts, so she was skeletonized by the time she was found. It was a year and a couple months later. So her hyoid bone, even though like her skeletal remains were pretty intact, but there were pieces of her hyoid bone that were missing. And that's the only thing. It's like, okay, like if someone did strangle her and they broke that hyoid bone, and they broke those, that could be something that would be washed away in a marsh. And then, but to find the major piece of the hyoid, but not find the other pieces, I think is what was a little bit odd. So, but then again, you have a year worth of, there's nothing that you can like really prove by that other than to go ahead and say it's still undetermined, Anyway, trying to locate her was what started this whole thing. There was a police officer that was off duty, and he had a new cadaver canine, and he decided to go to Gilgo Beach and try to get some training for his canine. Well, his canine ended up being spot on, because very short time after they arrived, they in fact found a body. And so now we can kind of go back over to this. So on April 11th of 2010, the body of Maureen Brainerd Barnes, she was 25. She is the alleged first victim of Rex Heuermann, even though he is just named a suspect in her case, and he has not been charged with her murder. And she had taken a train from her hometown of Connecticut to Manhattan on July 6th of 2007. So she texted a friend, and that she said she was meeting someone on an out call. So I didn't know what that was. It means like you're meeting somewhere other than the hotel that she was staying at on July 9th of 2007 at 11:43. She says, I'm leaving my hotel. I'm going to an out call. I'm going basically wherever the client wants me to go with him. And she did advertise on websites. So that's, something of a commonality between her and the other 3 women. She was left restrained. This is stuff that I copied and pasted from the charging affidavit, because they do talk about her in the charging affidavit. She was left restrained by 3 leather belts, which I find interesting as well. And then one of those leather belts was utilized to tie Barnes' feet, ankle, and legs together. So you would surmise that one around the feet, one around, the torso, like I guess 2 around the somewhere holding her like arms down, but just kind of a strange, I don't know, belts. Were they purchased for just this particular thing to show premeditation, or were they just something that the killer had laying around? We do know that they did find a belt with the letters on it. Was it? I don't think they could say whether it was like a. We'll look at that here in a minute later. I don't have it written down, but HM or MH, something with letters on it. So it looked like a personal belt. But a guy like Rex, dressing up for work on a daily basis, he probably did have a lot of belts. And then the other thing is that there was a hair found on one of the belt buckles that was later identified as belonging to Rex's wife. This is why it's kind of confusing that he hasn't been charged with hers yet. The only thing I can think is maybe it's because the burlap is missing, which, like that really doesn't fly. But, and then he used her cell phone after her murder. And they were able to correlate that. It's in the charging document. So she goes missing in July of 2007. She's found on April 11th, 2010, which then, they're finding skeletal remains. And so this large investigation ensues. And a couple days later, they find the body of Melissa Barthelemy. She was 24. She was from the Bronx. She told a friend that she was going to meet a client on July 12th of 2009 and would be back in the morning. So she was gone for it's a little under 2 years. And so was Maureen. No, 3 years. And then her cell phone shows that she took a taxi from her apartment at 1149 Underhill Avenue in the Bronx to Manhattan. Rex, he used her cell phone to call her younger sister. This is the one where you see his sadism come out, because he taunted this little girl, Barthelemy's sister. He called her, I think it was 7 to 9 times. I have 7 here, but I think it might have been upwards of 9. And like each time he got a little bit more in detail. The first call was like, "Are you going to turn out to be a whore like your sister? Are you going to, is that what you're going to do with your life?" And then he kept calling her back, and then he would tell her a little bit more about what he did to her sister. So just that sadism of wanting to relive his crime. And then he also Googled, that was in the affidavit as well. He searched for Melissa's younger sister in Google searches, so this almost like obsession that he had with her younger sister. And I wasn't able to definitively like figure out how old that sister was, but I think obviously her age is curious with the Google searches. If you've seen the affidavit, you know what I'm talking about. Just a lot of younger searches for, and you also see, which is a very common thread between serial murderers, is that sadism. They want to see fear. Fear is what gets them off, and pain. So pain and fear kind of go hand in hand, and they So that was his Google searches, had a lot to do with seeing young children, like young girls in distress, seeing that fear on their face, which is just, it fits the profile of most serial offenders, whether they just be rapists or murderers as well. He became more and more graphic and descriptive as to what he did to Melissa. It was just like really sad. On April 13th of 2010, Megan Waterman's remains were found. She was 22. She was originally from Scarborough, Maine. She was staying at a Holiday Inn Express in Hauppauge, New York. She did advertise on Craigslist as well and made trips to Long Island. That was something that they knew that she had done before. And she was last seen on June 6th of 2010 by her boyfriend, like your pimp, who drove her to Long Island to meet the client. Now, I wasn't able to find any more information on what was his witness testimony? Like, what did he say happened? He was later charged. I think his last name was Cruz, with a misdemeanor for, I can't remember what the exact charge was, but it had to do with being a pimp, basically. But yeah, like her, did he wait for her? Did he just drop her off? Was this like an overnight? I don't know. So she was found bound by clear or white duct tape. So we go from belts to duct tape. And then there were 2 hairs from Rex's wife found and later ID'd. They were able to make a positive identification later on as technology advanced, as forensic testing, DNA testing got a little bit more advanced. They were able, in the beginning, they were not able, they were, they could give a loose profile, but because it was with, it's just a mitochondrial. So with the advancements, they were able to positively link the hairs from Rex's wife to the hairs found on that duct tape, which is obviously, that's very incriminating, especially if you think about if he killed them in his home, or maybe, there is no other way to get these hairs on the duct tape that you are now taping to your dead victim other than you are the perpetrator of that crime. And she was, they also found a male hair on Megan, and it was later positively ID'd as Rex's. And then she was in burlap as well. There were 3 of the victims were in burlap, which obviously, I don't think of burlap as a signature. I think of it more as a convenience, because of the type it was. It wasn't what you're typically thinking of, like, the sacks you played hot potato in, where this is a camouflage, like duck hunting, like you're building a blind out of this. And so basically, like, if you think of like how you would roll up a body in carpet, so it's kind of similar to that. And then obviously with the being bound by in multiple spots with the duct tape to keep the burlap together. So yeah, then, so she was missing for, what is that, June of 2010. I think I got that in there wrong. Yeah, this should be 09, I believe, because her body was found on April 13th of 2010. So I've messed up somewhere. April 13th of 2010, they also find the body of Amber Lynn Costello. She was 27. She was from Wilmington, North Carolina. She was last seen leaving her home at 1112 American Avenue in West Babylon on September 2nd of 2010. So this is the most recent victim, even though he wasn't caught until just here recently. Her sister and her had both advertised on Craigslist. Her sister did a really fantastic interview. My heart goes out to her. of like she was both just young, naive, and it's a fast way to make good money and to gain your independence. And her sister got Amber involved in prostitution, and they were working for like an escort service, which one step up a little bit safer than Craigslist. But her sister then was like, no, like we can make a lot more money. We cut out the middleman and we can just advertise on Craigslist. And her sister had even said it was amazing, like within, and some other pimp boyfriend had said like, yeah, it was like within hours just blowing up. So, um, oh, hey, Supernova. Her name was, yeah, that was just such a weird thing that he did. So weird. And then the 911 calls are just, there's just something very like disturbing about the 911 calls that Shannon Gilbert made. But I can't like put my finger on it. I've listened to it twice and I can't place it. I don't know if it's like, again, the affect of just like kind of a flat affect, but yet she's clearly like scared for her life, but it's not transferring into her voice. It's just very strange. Um, but yeah, we'll get back to this. So so this happened the night before Amber disappeared. So a witness was so it was a ruse. They were just trying to basically steal from the John. And so they set up a ruse, and this witness, he later became a witness. I'm assuming it's a male, pretended to be Amber's boyfriend, and he set up a ruse to steal from the client and said so this witness says that he saw a first generation Chevy Avalanche, dark in color, and it was parked in the driveway. And he described the John as a large man, white, approximately 6'4" to 6'6". He in his mid 40s with dark bushy hair, a big oval face style, like 1970s type, and eyeglasses. A witness described him to police as appearing like an ogre. And if you've seen Rex, then I mean, this witness nailed him. Obviously, if you're having a confrontation, face to face with someone, and then your friend goes missing the next morning, like that's gonna be seared into your memory. I don't care how long time that goes by. But I believe that this was the tip that they were able to link that. This is just my theory. They went back like they do in all cases. I'm probably a data analyst, analyzing, and organizing tips and information. Probably was doing a spreadsheet and went to put this in. I was like, oh, wait a minute, like a first generation Chevy Avalanche, and then we have a description here. And so I think that's what kind of like got them to focus on him. He owned two. He gave one to his brother, the one that he would have had during the time of these murders, but then he got a new one. And so she was also bound by 3 pieces of clear or white duct tape, which obviously we know is similar to the one I read above. There was a female human hair that was recovered specifically on a piece of tape and inside the burlap wrapping, and it was later positively linked to Heuermann's wife. So let me pull up oh boy. It's different. Great. I think it's like froze. My voice frozen. Oh my. I don't know what's going on. Oh, I was going to pull up. I could do it on here. These are the Gilgo 4 right here. So this is Maureen. This is Melissa, Megan, and then lastly Amber. Those were the victims that he's been charged with. These three, the murder of Megan, Amber, and Melissa, but not with Maureen. Even though it seems like just based on the charging affidavit, they have enough. So yeah, you kind of, especially when you so this is the charging affidavit for Heuermann, and he continued this behavior. He did not stop with this is in 2021 22 to 23. Well, for one, he was the burner phone that he was using in 2010 he had on his person when they arrested him. But basically they did what within the law to do. They had a profile of the killer now with the advancements in DNA, and clearly they put a lot of work into all of the data that they were able to gather from all of the different phones. But Rex, and so basically, like, I feel like their case is just it's as solid as it gets. It really is a solid case. You have forensic, and you have circumstantial, you have physical, you have all of the evidences that you need for a conviction. And I think that he's done. The thing that's of concern and interest is that he never stopped this behavior. All the online predatory type behavior of meeting escorts and the burner phones, and trying to like be real, savvy with only using burner phones and not using his real cell phone, even though his mistake, which was quite large, was taking his cell phone along with him. So he's traveling with the burner phone, the cell phone, and I think in one case, one of the victim's phones. So not the brightest move. You started out good there with wanting to use burners, but then you kind of fell off when you took your own cell phone with you, because now it's been pinned at the same locations. So he's been charged with 3 counts of murder in the first, and 3 counts of murder in the second degree. And so basically why a prosecutor would decide to do this is they're hoping that the jury will find him guilty of first degree murder, which is premeditated murder, and the highest sentence under the law that you can receive would be from premeditated murder. It's premeditated, and then you took action afterwards to conceal the murder that you committed premeditatedly. But if the jury doesn't feel like the state has proved their case, they also have the option of choosing second degree murder, which I find when prosecutors do this, it's like, okay, especially with a case like this, with all of that, all of the data we're about to read, this is not second degree. These were well thought out, well planned, and executed crimes. So I don't know. I highly doubt that a jury of his peers would find him guilty of just second degree murder, which means you didn't plan it. Okay, well, maybe we could say that with his first victim, like that wasn't planned. But when you do the same behaviors and you do that 3 more times at least that we know of, then that is premeditation in and of itself. Like so I don't really understand the second degree murder. But yeah, so here's the police officer. His name was John Malia, and he was conducting a training exercises with his canine partner Blue. And that's what I said earlier when they found Melissa's. They found Melissa first, but Maureen was the first like victim. Like she went missing in what was that, 07, 06, 07. So basically, like we have a stretch here of victims, and he killed them between 07 and 2010. So I think it's I don't find it reasonable to think that's it. Like he's just done, like that he stopped, or that there might be prior victims of him following that same MO of, contacting them through Craigslist or websites. And then later he uses Tinder. So you have that. But yeah, so this is where they have all of the coordinates for where their bodies were found. You can see where the coordinates are. And then you also see where, how many feet in the marsh that he walked their bodies, which it wouldn't be hard for a man of his size. But yeah, so this is and here we can see this is the area where Shannon Gilbert, this is Jones Beach here where the other victims were found, and then Fire Island over here. Yeah, just very pattern-like. The victims each appeared to have been placed in close proximity to one another, 22 to 33 feet from the edge of the parkway, and that's Ocean Parkway. All were petite females, approximately 22 to 27 years old, believed to be working as sex workers. All had missing clothing and personal possessions. So those are that, unless he just threw them away, those are trophies, and that's probably something that they found in the search of his home. And they were all killed by homicide, and all had contact shortly before their disappearance with a person using a burner cell phone. Cell phones without an associated verified identity, and the cell phone of the 4 victims, Brainerd and Bartholomew, were used by the killer after their deaths. In addition, each of the 4 victims were found similarly positioned. So their bodies were laid out and positioned with the tape and the burlap, and they were bound in a similar fashion by either belts or tape, and with 3 of the victims being wrapped in a burlap type material. So this just kind of goes into more that they were on March 14th of 2022, approximately 2 months into the renewed joint investigation. About time they got down with that. This comprehensive, so they did a comprehensive review, led to the discovery of a first-generation Chevy Avalanche that was registered to the defendant Rex A. Heuermann at the time of these murders. As described below, this was significant because a witness to the disappearance of Amber Costello identified a first-generation Chevy Avalanche as the vehicle believed to have been driven by her killer. This discovery led to a comprehensive investigation to the defendant Heuermann. It consisted of 300 subpoenas, search warrants, and other legal processes to obtain evidence. So as discussed more fully below, among the items uncovered were cell phone billing records for defendant Heuermann corresponding to cell site locations One for the burner cell phones used to arrange meetings with three of the four victims. The taunting calls made to a relative of Miss Bartholomew, a call made by a detective to Miss Bartholomew's cell phone while looking into her disappearance. And they were checking voicemails of Miss Brainerd Barnes' cell phone after her disappearance. In addition, Heuermann lived in Massapequa Park, where the victims were believed to have disappeared from. And he worked in Midtown Manhattan, in the vicinity of where the taunting calls were made to the sister. One of the, I don't remember if it was Valerie or Jessica, but they were last seen at a bus terminal in Manhattan. So something. He worked in the Midtown Manhattan, in the vicinity of where the taunting calls were made to the sister of Melissa. As set forth more fully, the defendant, Heuermann, is believed to be the person who used the burner cell phones to communicate with each of the four victims prior to their disappearance, and who used Miss Barnes' cell phone and Miss Bartholomew's cell phone after their deaths. Both defendant Heuermann and these burner cell phones had significant connections to both Midtown Manhattan and Massapequa Park near New York. See how what I was meaning about, even though he's not been charged, they still, and they did have like a, in parentheses type right here. Although the defendant is not yet charged with any crimes as to the disappearance and murders of Miss Brainerd Barnes, as set forth below, Rex Heuermann is the prime suspect in her death and the investigation, which is continuing and is expected to be resolved soon. Moreover, there is some substantial evidence of defendant Heuermann's involvement in the disappearance, death of Miss Barnes, which closely finds the modus operandi of the defendant in relation to the deaths of the other three women, and which supports the current charges. So we've already kind of gone over this part here of just methodically linking him to these victims, and then obviously to their death. It's a slam dunk to me. And then his wife was out of the state during, I think, at least they were able to, like, I think 3. So she was in Iceland. She was in 2 other locations during the time of these women's disappearances, and then consequently their murders, which, makes you, did he take these victims back to his house? Can you imagine being this wife? I hate that she's being just kind of followed and harassed and all of the crazy stuff that goes on. Because we literally don't know anything about her. And even like profilers are getting in on it. And it's like, oh, well, she's into gaming, so she's into fantasy too. It's like, so what? Like, what is your point? We all think that we would be able to spot evil, spot sinister personality traits in our person that we're with, our loved one, and we really just have nothing to base that on. This is your husband being arrested as a serial killer is so far out of the box. That's just not a normal person. Obviously we do, because we're here in the true crime, but we confuse ourselves with the mainstream, like just the public. And you don't go around like thinking like, oh, I wonder if, he's a serial killer. Like, that's not something that ever enters your mind. So yeah, they may do things that you retrospectively look back on and be like, oh, that was kind of weird. Just out of the blue, he brought me a necklace. Like, he didn't do that before. Like, or I found panties in this car, and he explained it away as like, oh, I got you that gift, I just didn't wrap it yet. you know. That's an actual one that I heard from a serial killer's wife. That's what he told her. Well, that was a serial rapist, but yeah, he literally told her, he's like, "Oh yeah, I hadn't wrapped that up yet. That's meant for you." He just forgot it on the floorboard of his car, but that he was collecting souvenirs from his victims, and so retrospectively, like she knew something was up. She tried her best. This other victim, so she's a victim as well. They're all victims, you know. I don't know why people are so easy to jump to the fact that, like, oh, they must be involved too. Like, what? That makes zero sense. That's not the that would be the exception to the rule most of the time. Not saying that it doesn't happen, because it does. And coercion and codependency is usually the key factors that lead to a wife or girlfriend, or even, two males the murdering together. Is usually has to do with coercive control and um, fear, and codependent personality disorders. Um, but to assume that's the case with all is just irresponsible. And to use something so trivial as she likes Comic-Con or whatever. And so therefore, like, she's big into fantasy world too. Like, shut up. So annoying. And then can you imagine having someone outside of your house? Like, you've just learned out like the most life-changing, altering information. She's already filed for divorce, like, and then you've got media wanting to get a snippet, just constantly, just outside. You have no privacy. You there's nowhere you can go. Like, I would feel, like a trapped animal. Like, I can't even imagine what she's going through, and what the two children are going through. They didn't ask to be the loved ones of a serial killer, just like the victims didn't ask to be the victims of a serial killer. They're just the fallout. And people need to have some grace with that. But I don't see happen very often at all. But yeah, so I mean, they just really thoroughly went through, gave images that connected him, and but the interesting thing is like, he was still doing the same MO. He never quit doing it, and using the burner cell phones and contacting escorts. He kept all of those same behaviors that were linked to his murders that he committed. So he continued doing all of that. I don't think it's unreasonable to think that he continued to murder some. Now, there are many different serial killers that have targeted prostitutes, and they let some live, they kill some. Like, that is very a common thread between all of them, especially the ones that specifically target. Other than like Ridgway, I don't think. Well, no, yeah, even Ridgway let like some victims live. Like, he didn't set out to kill them. Like, and only, I think he was eventually caught because one a woman escaped, and she came forward later. But yeah, like, most of them, for whatever reason, they don't kill all of the people that they proposition for and then have relations with. I'm trying to think of a way to say it well. But he used, like fake accounts, and they're linked to like fake numbers and fake names and all of these things. And some of the things that he looked up obviously are super disturbing. I'm not going to say them out loud, but like, yeah, just. And then this one here, this one is one that is makes you kind of wonder about the John Doe, but he was found and he was dressed. He had been badly beaten, and he had been, but he was a dress was found. So, um, is that something that doesn't that fell outside of the MO for either the serial killer that I feel is linked to all of the other victims, Fire Island, Peaches, her child, Valerie and Jessica, and probably Cherries for sure. Um, is that, like, is it outside of the scope? It's in the same area, but outside the scope of like what was done to the victim, because they found out, like they figured out, like, oh my gosh, like I just, like, did this man not say like I'm transgender, and that information wasn't, and so that's why it fell outside of their normal modus operandi, because that would anger, especially a psychopathic serial killer. Like, I think I'm meeting a petite little pretty Asian woman, and then when that happens, I find out that they're not a woman at all. And then did that aggravate the killer to beat them to death? But in the papers it says that, like, his manner of death was completely different than all of the other victims, and you have to kind of wonder why. And they speculate that there's three. This is a dumbing down for three, which I just find kind of ludicrous. I think this just, okay, you got me with, like, okay, there's probably two, but like three, all right there in that same area, like, that's their dumping grounds. It's just, I don't know. I think he belongs to one of the two killers, either Rex or the other one. But his searches are really sadistic, and that just kind of shows his, and this was in 2022, 23, and then his Google searches are interesting as well. He's looking at things like he wants to be notorious. He wants to be terrifying. He wants to be a serial killer. He wants to keep track of the case. John Bitroff was a person that I think it was like a DA, just like literally like blurted out that Bitroff was the killer of the Gilgo Four, and with no correlating evidence whatsoever. It's just like, oh yeah. And then so he kind of got in trouble for that. But Bitroff, he was in prison. I'm not sure what his status is for murdering two prostitutes. But here he is Googling the names of the victims, which I would. Another thing, obviously, he didn't just Google 24 things. They're not putting on here. They're putting on the relevant things. So my question obviously would be like, what other names was he Googling? Because if he's Googling his victims' names, then, and we know that they're his victims, just common sense there. But yeah, like when you think of what the eyewitness said, you see this like thick hair, just so gross. But yeah, kind of looking like an ogre, kind of a big guy. Just, I don't know. I don't know what it is with people taking their pictures in bathrooms. I don't know, maybe this is in an office space somewhere, but it's like people taking their pictures in bathroom mirrors and then using them as your Tinder profile to like meet, to, like, it just is so silly to me. Like, it's so gross. Like, so yeah, they did surveillance on him. They found him buying more minutes to the cell phone that not he was still using that he had back in the day. And it talks a little bit about like the forensic type evidence, which, um, but they got his DNA from a discarded, once you discard stuff and it's public. So they got found a trash can, followed him, had him under surveillance, under video surveillance. He puts a pizza box in a trash can and they collect it, and then they get his DNA off of the crust, and then they later match that to the hair on found on one of the victims, on Waterman. And then that's it. So there we have it on those four. And then we go into about a year later, still searching for Shannon. They find the body of, on April 4th of 2011, of the Asian John Doe that I just discussed. This is their rendering of what he looked like. They found his skeletal remains, and they were estimated to have been there for more than 5 years. I think NamUs says 5 to 10 years. He's believed to be around 17 to 23 years old, 5'6", with close shaved hair. He's missing top and bottom molars and a front upper tooth. He's wearing women's clothing. The body was intact and badly beaten. Oh yeah, this was one where I found the face belonging to a woman known only as Jane Doe number 6 took about a week for forensic artist Danielle something to conjure. This kind of goes on about just the art that goes into reconstructing someone's face in order to show the public what they could have looked like in life. Yeah, so the other artist rendering is of an Asian male, 17 to 23 years old, 5'6", with close cropped hair. Dormer said the man was missing top and bottom molars and front upper teeth. He was dressed in woman's clothing, Dormer said, and dead 5 to 10 years. Authorities said that they were investigating the possibility that the 4 adult victims who remain unidentified. So this, again, it's old, but this is the later. They 2 have been identified, and then they found more. So may also have been sex workers. We want to reach out to people in the escort business. We feel their information would be very valuable in this investigation. Authorities suspect the 4 victims found in Yogo Beach in December, Melissa, Megan, Maureen, and Amber, were slain by one killer. But the suspected methods of killing and body disposal for the 6 others suggest at least 2 additional killers. That's where, like, you lose me with at least 2 were responsible, authorities have said. Lynn Bartholomew, Melissa's mother, said she still holds out hope police will someday find her killer. I'm hoping in my lifetime, I'm hoping before he kills many more girls, she said. The announcement yielded little comfort to the family of Shannon Gilbert, 24, a prostitute, last seen in Oak Beach on May 1st of 2010. Officials have said Gilbert's disappearance led to the first bodies being found in December. Suffolk police yesterday said there are no leads on Gilbert's whereabouts. And then this is, like, these are just what I found going through old newspapers. So on February 16th of 2012, there was human remains found again in Maynardville, but they were that of a man. Was just, like I've told you guys, I just pull them, and then later, like, I go back and see if I can find follow-up news reports on them. But also on March 21st of 2012, human remains of a woman. This was the one that was found in Maynardville as well, and it was there was a documentary that I watched, and they had this victim tied in with the serial killer, and, like, I was able to find kind of proof that that's not the case. So her boyfriend just kind of like said he dumped her body out there after she had OD'd, and yeah, he was just charged with a misdemeanor for that. So kind of strange. And then yeah, that's the last one I have. But hey, lighting the way. Hey, pigs fly. Why would Rex family stay in that house? Seems a little crazy. Yeah. You know, like I don't know. I wouldn't want to, but you know, like um, trying to get everything figured out. Try like it's where you're comfortable, even though like a lot of disassociation probably happens. Like they haven't, and I've seen this with the interviews done with other serial killers' loved ones, where they're for a while like they were hearing the facts, but they were still unable to come to terms with the facts of what they're hearing strangers, even though they're law enforcement, they're strangers say about their loved one. They're not able to mesh those together yet. There's still a disconnect. And so this is someone that you feel that that you've known for a long time and that you love. There is an emotional, connection there. I'm not saying that's the case with Rex and his wife. We don't know what was going on behind closed doors. But with other serial killers' wives that have come forward and done interviews, you see that like they're just like, this is not. There's no way I missed this. This is not possible. They have the wrong guy, and so there could be just some disassociation going on for sure. That would be a good reason why they would stay there. Um, I was trying to find one particular article. So many. Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to find it. Yeah, I knew I should have saved it. Oh, well, this was, you know, like old Jill Rifkin. We reviewed him and his victims. He targeted prostitutes as well in the Long Island and different parts of New York. And he dumped them, everywhere. So, um, yeah, this was his take on the Long Island serial killer. Long Island serial killer Joel Rifkin says he's not impressed by the fiendish handiwork of a murderer who dumped the bodies of 4 women near Oak Beach. With the air of a veteran schooling an amateur, Rifkin said the sicko being hunted by cops, and the FBI should never have left all the corpses in one place. Duh. I dumped them hundreds of miles apart. So here he is, that superiority complex. I did it this way. Um, Rifkin proudly told the Daily News yesterday in a 70-minute interview and you can watch this on YouTube, at the upstate prison where he will spend the rest of his life. Rifkin killed 17 prostitutes in a 4-year spree and took pains to dispose of the bodies. His victims were scattered in rivers and wooded areas from the east end of Long Island to upstate. 3 were never found. In Oak Beach, 4 decomposing bodies were found within a quarter-mile area just off a remote highway, and cops believe one killer is responsible. Rifkin suggests the killer was sloppy. for picking a single dumping ground because it alerted the cops to the likelihood of a serial killer and brought more heat to the case. Rifkin, who once lived in East Meadow, Long Island, said he was always more frightened about dumping his bodies than strangling or dismembering his victims. I was surprised I didn't get caught sooner, said Rifkin, who was busted in 1993 with his final victim's body in the back of his mother's pickup truck. He said his arrest was the result of a 25-cent mistake, a missing license plate. Rifkin, 51, said cops looking for the Oak Beach killer should probably focus on white men aged 18 to 45, but acknowledged the magnitude of that challenge. That's like half the country, he said. He speculated that the suspect would have shared some of his experience growing up lonely in the suburbs, being mocked and bullied, grappling with anger. America's breeds serial killers. America breeds serial killers. Rifkin said, you don't see any from Europe. That's simply not true, but okay. Police have not identified the Oak Beach victims, but they are investigating possible links to two missing hookers, which did not surprise Rifkin. He said prostitutes are obvious targets for serial slayers. No family, he explained, occasionally breaking into laughter as he discussed his bloody history. They can be gone 6 or 8 months and no one is looking. The two missing women in the Suffolk County probe advertised their services on Craigslist, which didn't exist when Rifkin was hunting for victims. He focused on anonymous street hookers, not expensive escorts. So, if one prostitute disappears, the world shrugs off as if we're just the wages. That's just the wages of sin. You know, um, anyway. If there is even the possibility that two missing prostitutes are among 4 bodies found on Long Island, we suddenly want to know who they are and when they were last seen. Sadly, it is not really the women who drive the popular interest. It is just the chance they were victims of a mythic specter, the subjects of countless books and movies, a serial killer. Had the bodies been male, we would assume the deserted shoreline where they were discovered was just a dumping ground for a killer or killers who were only multiple or opposed to serial. As opposed to gangsters and other multiple, like mobs, view homicide as a means to an end, such as eliminating witnesses or reducing competition or getting someone before they get you. Even in this age of equality, there do not seem to be enough pragmatic reasons for killing 4 women. Cops and everybody else cannot help but think it is the work of someone who views killing as an end in itself. Serial killers do it for the sake of doing it, and that is what makes them so horrifying and therefore so fascinating, even if they invariably turn out to be depressing and ultimately pathetic losers. When the victims are prostitutes, the immediate thought is of Jack the Ripper, who was never identified and therefore never deflated by mundane reality. If any good can come from the specter of a Long Island Ripper, it is the sudden interest in the 2 prostitutes who might be among the victims. Both Megan Waterman and Shannon Gilbert have families as heartsick as the families of any other missing young woman. She might not have always made good choices, but she was loved, said Waterman's Aunt Elizabeth. Waterman was a single mom working in a sandwich shop when she met Akeem Cruz. He had been under indictment for shooting an acquaintance in Brooklyn when the victim suddenly recanted. He thereupon departed for Maine, where he met Waterman and swept her off her feet. She definitely imagined he loved her. So she seemed like a real target to this douche. Cruz convinced her to become an escort. They took a bus down to New York. The last trace of her is security cam footage showing her leaving a Long Island Holiday Inn Express where she had met a client. My mommy is missing, her 4-year-old daughter keeps saying. The aunt took the daughter to see Santa on the weekend, but Christmas seems likely to come without her getting what she wants more than anything. Why aren't you looking for my mommy too? She asks when the aunt babysits her. Gilbert also has loved ones who wanted nothing more than this Christmas than to see her again. DNA tests will show whether she and Waterman are among the unfortunate 4 who are at least appear to be victims of a serial killer. So this is a very early on article. Cops raid. So this is back to the Gilbert case, which we've already discussed. I'm not going to read that again, but yeah, I thought that while it's like that sad but true, the author of that wrote that the bottom portion of the prior page, a lot of just the truth. It's just that's just the truth, you know. And when you choose these lifestyles, you're also choosing to put your families in that position to where you're at a high risk of going missing and a high risk of being murdered and hurt. And that means that you're putting your family in the position to be like Shannon's and Megan's and Marine's and Melissa's and Amber's. I wonder if anyone ever says that, ever thinks that when you're at a precipice of your young life and you're about to make decisions. Do you ever think about the consequences that your decisions could leave on the people that you leave in your wake and your family members? And maybe some would be persuaded to make a different choice. Easy money is really great at first, you know, but chasing that dollar, you know, and more times than not leads to a life of misery. And it's just like a downward spiral from there. But very sad. I'm just going to try to find the case on his Shannon's mother. I thought her name was in here. Oh, this is the rest of Rifkin. Girls advertise for $1,000 a night. Most guys who are serial killers can't afford that, but we know that Rex could. Hookers made for easy targets because they were often on their backs, making it easy to overpower them. Rifkin recounted as cartoons played on the visiting room TV. He said he paid the prostitutes as much for their temporary friendship as for sex, and never just to kill them. I became addicted to sex and companionship, said Rifkin, a long gray ponytail hanging down his back. There was no sentimentality as he described what he did to the women after they were beaten and strangled. You carve them like a turkey, he said. He said this because I got to think that these men or women serial killers, humans they're objects. They're no longer a human like them. They're just objects to them. So they're easily discarded and talked about in this manner because everything is When you can, when you're completely desensitized, or you lack it in the first place, as identifying yourself with other humans, then they're just a object for you to use as at your will. That he justified by reminding himself the women were drug addicts and hookers with no self-respect, said Rifkin. Rifkin says he regrets his rampage, but he sounded bizarrely not, you say that word, not nostalgic, as he spoke about how much easier it was to kill in his day. He said technology like GPS and cell phones has given police a tremendous advantage in tracking victims. Law enforcement is a lot more sophisticated now than it was when he was picking up prostitutes in Manhattan and spreading their remains across 9 counties. They pull up the Jane Does and compare notes, he said, which is true. That's why we're not seeing a lot of huge numbers like we were back in the 70s, 60s, 70s. Well, more so, like really, it's mid 70s to early 90s. Just serial killers just really flourished. So they also started getting a lot of attention by major media. But nowadays, when there's hardly any serial killers that have those high numbers like Gary Ridgway, and even more than one or two. That's why I think the FBI lowered that number from 3 to 2, because they're getting caught a lot sooner, but they are of the same mentality. They are serial killer-esque, if you will. Oh yeah, forgot. I was going to find that. Yep. I'm just going to pop them all up. I know I saved it. Get her name. Yeah. So this is a same family. This is Shannon Gilbert's family here. Police, woman found dead, daughter facing murder charges. Ellenville, the mother of a sex worker who, that's things have definitely evolved over, from 2016 to now even. But, just gosh, can you imagine? I'm sure that, no one ever sets out to be a sex worker for the rest of their life. That's just not something that you dream about becoming. But after you go missing or your death and you weren't able to do anything different, you're forever known as you're literally just a sex worker. So insensitive, but okay. Led to the discovery of 10 sets of human remains strewn along Island's Gilgo Beach, was found dead in her apartment, and another daughter has been charged in the killing. The family's attorney and police said Sunday the body of Mary Gilbert, 52, was found around 2:15 Saturday inside her Ellenville apartment in the Catskill Catskill police said. Sarah Elizabeth Gilbert, 27, was arraigned on murder and weapons possession charges. Ellenville police said in a release on Facebook. Family attorney John Ray said Mary Gilbert was fatally stabbed. The daughter was being held without bail in the Ulster County Jail. She was scheduled to appear in court Tuesday. Sarah Elizabeth Gilbert suffered from serious mental disabilities and had been charged several months ago with fatally stabbing her dog. Ray said in a telephone interview, he said she had lived on and off with her mother. Mary Gilbert's other daughter, Shannon Gilbert, vanished in May of 2020 after fleeing the home of a client in Oak Beach, New York. The search for the missing woman led to the surprise discovery of 11 sets of human remains, including hers. No one has ever been arrested in any of the killings, but investigators believe a possible serial killer, perhaps more than one, is responsible. A canine officer and his cadaver dog were on the training mission searching for Gilbert in December of 2010 when they happened upon what would become, by spring of the following year, 10 sets of human remains, 8 women, a man, and a toddler. The remains were found strewn along several miles of thicket adjacent to Ocean Parkway, just east of Jones Beach. The 10 other victims, including at least 4 other sex workers, were found about 3 miles west of their officials found. So I'm just continuing on to read this. We already know this stuff. What was her name? Sarah, 2 R's. I was trying to see what um, what ended up happening with Sarah. So the attorney that the family had ended up defending her, a possible insanity defense, but he will press on with Marie Gilbert's quest to get to the bottom of the Shannon Gilbert mystery. So sad. Too much death, too much anger, and too much tragedy here. Oh, it's so sad. She really became quite the spokesperson for all of the victims. I mean, she was one of the key uh, interviewees in what was that called? Lost Girls, Lost Daughters, something along that lines, but very sad. Oh, what is it doing? Kingston woman convicted of stabbing her mother to death. A jury has returned a guilty verdict in the murder trial of the sister of Shannon Gilbert, who disappeared. Adherence led to the discovery of 10 sets of human remains along Long Island Beach. An Ulster County jury Thursday found 28-year-old Sarah Gilbert guilty of second-degree murder, rejecting a defense claim she was driven by mental illness. Prosecutors said she stabbed her 52-year-old mother, Mary, more than 200 times and bashed her head with a fire extinguisher in the mother's Catskill home in July. Gilbert faces 25 years to life in prison when she's sentenced on August 1st. And this is 2017. Sarah's sister, Shannon Gilbert, vanished in 2010 after fleeing a client on a Long Island beach. Her searchers found 10 sets of human remains. Police believe they were the victims of the serial killer, but Shannon Gilbert accidentally drowned. And you can only imagine the family's frustration, of like, oh, this one's an accident? Like, what? But yeah. That's all I have for you today. Oh, thank you, Lake. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for becoming a member again, lighting the way. I know I really struggle with being consistent, don't I? Hey, Johnny, how are you? Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, she really did. Maybe. That's a good point, Daisy. Um, hey, CJK. Hope you're well. And again, thank you, Frank. Monica. Dan in Nebraska here. Good talk. Thank you. Yes, please hit the like. I appreciate it. Hey, Grandma. What this type of stuff is the one reason I don't want to go places, and they call me crazy. Right there with you, Grandma Watches. You know that. This type of thing has been going on all the time. Yet we hear more stories because of being connected. So, has it gotten worse or just better informed? It's a great question. I am really starting to feel like I'm getting sick. Like my head is oh feeling funny. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, you can come here. Come stay with me. I'll keep you safe. Yeah. mental health is a part of the problem. But look at the stress our people are going through. Yeah, everything is so heightened um, nowadays. And it is, it is, there's like that dichotomy of like you're better informed, but with more information can sometimes be, if you don't take care to balance it, it can end up being a pitfall just as much as being uninformed. It's a slippery slope. But if you think about just society as a whole, in general, like in the baby boomer back era, maybe some of Gen Y, there was this, you did not talk about politics, you did not talk about religion, you did not talk about what goes on inside your home, you didn't talk about your sex, like none of that. Like that was just a unwritten societal rule that everybody kind of just followed, and there was a suppression of feelings. People were not open about anything, and to be open about mental health, well, you would end up in that asylum lickety split for mentioning how you're feeling, or, like, so everything was just suppressed, like a suppression of feelings. And then, what typically happens in societies is there is a major overcorrection. We went from this needed to be corrected, but it didn't need to be corrected so severely as what we're seeing now, and that overcorrection from past societal generations of humans, to where we're just all about the feels. Whatever you feel is valid, whatever you feel is fair, whatever you feel is, you are the center of the feelings. And that is a slippery slope as well. So it's just that when you really kind of need to be a society that's in the middle of those two. They're both unhealthy. They really are unhealthy. And what parents are teaching their kids nowadays is, while the parents of old who were not showing any, there was a lot of structure and discipline, but there wasn't a lot of mental health help and love and affection, caused all kinds of problems. But this overindulging, yes, kids that are hugged and loved on and they are shown affection are way better off. Like that's just a known. But when you overindulge a child and you helicopter parent and you enable them to think that life is fair and that they are the most important person in any room, and that nothing bad happens to them. Someone is always there to fight their battles for them. They don't ever have to live with any kind of a bad feeling. And then if they want to, whatever they feel is just, the most important thing. And that creates a slew of problems that are oddly similar to the problems of old. You end up with mental health crises. You have these kids that eventually they're going to find out that life is just not fair, and that not all people are nice. They're going to go out into the real world and they're going to be faced with this, and it's going to be a traumatic shock for them when they realize that not everybody loves them, and that life is in fact not fair, and that they are not the center of, no one cares about them. I think the sooner you can teach your children that you are just, it sounds harsh, but that you are not you are not that important, and I mean that in like a good way of just balancing out like your ego. Like you're not that important in the grand scheme of things, but what you can do is worry about you and yours, and you only fall asleep at night with yourself. So what are the thoughts? What does your day look like in retrospect And are you proud of, or are things that you would want to do different the next day? Because at the end of the day, like, we only control ourselves. Yeah, I don't either. I hate going to grocery stores anymore. At one point in their life, the point someone wants to hurt others is just point is just not something I understand. To be able to help, they have to seek it, and that is a problem. Yeah, very true. Watching the government should have done a better job. Myself would give up freedoms that I really don't need to make sure our kids and family and country are safe. That's a slippery slope too. I see both sides of it. I had some really good discussions with my sister and her husband when I was out there in Denver. Um, we like things to be in black and white, and um, so often they're just really not. And but when you go making black and white um, rules and regulations um, in gray areas, you're always going to end up with a problem. But get the focus of what the real problem is, and especially in U.S. Media, is never about the actual problem. It's sad, and the victims are often forgotten because of political parties and nonsense, and they're both despicable, and they should both be ashamed of themselves for acting the way that they do. It's just straight up ego and power trips. Republicans, Democrats, I don't give a fork who you are. Um, in politics, they're all just rats. And we don't have to be in their cage. We can try to not get sucked into this weird thing that's going on with humans, where all of a sudden you have to choose a side, and like, oh, and to think of not being friends with someone because of how they voted is insane to me. That's just insane, but it happens. And I don't know. Yeah, I do that too, Jill. I get it. In Summerwell's case, it's all about views or subs. Yeah. I know. I there's some Delphi like creators that I absolutely love, but I've never been a Delphi creator. I have covered the case. Probably what I think I could count the times I've covered it on the totality of like how long I've had this channel. Maybe a handful of times. Like, I am not a Delphi creator yet. When people want me to mind myself and they don't like what I'm talking about, that's like their go-to is like, why don't you just get back to solving the Delphi case? Well, for one, like, we're not going to solve the Delphi case as citizens. Come on. We can bring awareness to cases, and but I never really like I haven't covered it a lot. So I don't know, maybe it's just because I live in Indiana. I don't know, but I do enjoy like being on like Frank and Sleuth and some other channels. Obviously through Delphi is where I found Greg Hughes' channel. A lot of good channels out there that have moved on and do other things now and branching out. But it's hard when you do it. It's hard not okay. It's hard not to be offended. Um, this project that I've done has taken weeks, hours and hours of time, and the views will be low. Revenue will be cents. Super chats will be low. All of that going into it. But if I come on here and I do something about Greeno, the views are high, the super chats are high, the revenue of the videos are high, so it kind of like hurt your kind of like hurt your feelings of just like, wow, like I did all of this, and like people don't want, they don't want to see that, even though I feel like the work that I've done, obsessive or not, with exposing con men, is worth it, because you can help people that are not yet victims. Maybe do some proactive things, especially in the true crime world. Like, it's all in retrospect, like, the victim, like, or they're missing or they're murdered, but to be able to help victims that are still alive not to fall into a trap that could get them seriously injured, just in general, is you're really giving back. Or to be able to help a victim's family that someone has just lied and abused their families greatly, over the years, and done so many hurtful things, and said so many things. When you can, like, stand up for them, you are kind of helping them in kind of a more productive way, because you can't really help them solve. You can help bring awareness and keep that case out in the public's eye, but you can't help them solve most murders. There's very few outliers that have been solved by just regular citizens. Yeah. But yeah, like, there's like been 10 people consistently in here, but if I have a more contentious, or there's going to be a lot more people, and there's going to be a lot more interest, and I find it sad, but you just kind of got to do what you want, or you'll find yourself real miserable real quick. Thanks, Grandma Watches. All right, guys, I am going to head out here and take some Benadryl. Whew. All right, I'll see you later. Have a good day.